Thank you, Kevin. My name is Bruce Russell Jr., and I'm running to be your next district attorney. And I humbly and requestfully ask for your vote and your support in the May 24th election. I'm born in Northeast Georgia, raised right here in Raven County. In fact, I went to elementary school right here in this building when it was still an elementary school. Graduated from Raven County High School in '93, and then went on to University of Colorado and got my degree in economics and political science. After college, I joined the Navy. I spent 6 great years in the Navy. Started out as a military policeman, and then when I went to my sea duty, I was an anti-submarine warfare specialist on the USS O'Kane, which was a destroyer in the Persian Gulf. Not a lot of submarines in the Persian Gulf, and since I had law enforcement experience, I was able to lead a security detail for our search and seizure team. Our search and seizure team went after pirates, terrorists, and smugglers. We just called them bad guys. After I received my honorable discharge, I went to law school at Mercer, and then came back to here, Raven County, to practice law with my dad. And I'm willing and able to serve as your district attorney.
Stay seated, please, for the live stream that we're doing.
Right.
We don't got you right here.
In all fairness, I'll stand for the first time that remains sitting here after. Thank you. I'm George Christian. I'm your district attorney. I have a lot of experience. I'm a career prosecutor. I began my career after serving in the Navy. I worked for the district attorney's office in Houston County. There I tried many murder cases, rape cases, child molestation cases. When I left there, I went with the U.S. Attorney's Office in Macon. As a federal prosecutor, I prosecuted complex white-collar crimes. When I left there, I was chief of the criminal division, was responsible for the federal prosecutions in 70 counties in the state of Georgia. I supervised 15, 17 criminal prosecutors. I also supervised the support staff as well. In addition, I was a mentor. I was a senior litigation person in the U.S. Attorney's Office, which means I help young lawyers learn the ropes. We live here. We built here in '93. We love this area. I started working for Brian Rickman about 4.5 years ago and was appointed as your DA when Brian went to the Georgia Court of Appeals. I want your vote and support. Thank you.
Gentlemen, this question's for both of you. What do you see as the biggest need for the district attorney's office?
The biggest need for the district attorney's office, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, you're up.
I'm not trying to jump the moderator, Mr. Sheila. I promise you that. I think the biggest need for the district attorney's office is that they need a DA that will be able to see the big picture and come in and be able to coordinate with all the different agencies, all the different counties. We have 3 very different counties here in our mountain circuit, and I believe they all have their own different challenges. The best way that the DA's office can go about conducting this business is to coordinate very efficiently and very well with all those different agencies and try to build a consensus as far as the best way to prosecute crime here in the mountain circuit.
Mr. Christian.
Thank you. As district attorney, you have to make a lot of tough decisions day to day that affect people's lives. I've walked with victims into the courtroom. I put children on the stand as victims of child molestation. I've had to, when a woman was in a wheelchair testifying, her dead leg fell off one of those shelves and I had to go pick it up. That's the kind of experience I have. I am supportive of all the local organizations. Since I've been appointed February the 16th, I've met with Prevent Child Abuse Haversham probably 4 times. I've been at the Powerhouse trying to figure out solutions to juveniles who are committing terrible crimes and are endangering themselves and others. I've been to the Faith Office. So I have the experience, I have the contacts, I love the community, and I will work hard as your district attorney to ensure that victims are protected and represented.
This question is for both of the candidates. What do you feel is the largest criminal concern facing the Mountain Judicial Circuit?
Mr. Christian.
Well, everybody's going to say drugs because drugs affect our community in a number of ways, none of which are good. The drug cases themselves, most property cases are a result of people being addicted to drugs. Car wrecks involve alcohol and drugs. So the drug problem is obviously the foremost problem. One of the things we're trying to do, in addition to just pure prosecution, is for those who are severely addicted, is through our accountability courts, helping them to break that cycle of addiction. If you can stop that mother or that father from being addicted, if you can turn them around, give them a lifestyle that's healthy, productive, it's going to break that cycle of abuse with their children and their grandchildren. And so it's important not only that we prosecute, but we try to help people in the community. This community has lots of needs. As your district attorney, I'm committed to working to make it a better community.
Mr. Russell.
Mr. Kirsch is absolutely right. The drug problem is a serious issue in this community. We have a lot of trafficking coming through on our highway system, and we also have quite a few of our citizens who have gotten caught in the cycle of addiction. The drug courts are extremely important in that they give addicts a chance to get out and break that cycle of coming into the criminal justice system, going through prison, coming home, and then going right back into the criminal justice system. Those drug courts do a very good job of giving them an opportunity to come back into society. I also believe that domestic violence and child abuse is a very big issue here in this county and in the circuit overall. I've worked with Faith and with Powerhouse for Kids, representing victims on the civil side, and also I take many appointed cases in the juvenile court representing juveniles and parents that have gotten themselves into trouble, and we have to work through all of the state agencies in order to try to prevent that child abuse and to try to get parents back on the road to doing the right thing for their children.
Gentlemen, this question's for both of you. Given the stated concerns of Superior Court Judge Rusty Smith, former District Attorney Brian Rickman, and House Representative Doug Collins regarding Raven County's lack of mental health services, which has led to repeat offenders and repeated arrests, what do you propose as a solution or remedy?
Mr. Russell.
Well, many of the crimes that are committed are actually not as a result of criminal activity. It's a result of mental health issues. We do have resources in this community. Avita is one of them that we can refer some of our folks to. Another good resource through the juvenile court is the juvenile accountability court that the juvenile court has recently started. Another avenue of approach is also trying to institute some of the veterans courts, because some of these folks that are committing crimes that have a need for mental health services are indeed veterans. And it's unfortunate, but one of the good things is they do have the ability to get some treatment and some ability to go and get better through the VA. And we just need to continue to explore all of the avenues that are available to us in order to provide as much mental health services to those that are sick as we possibly can.
Mr. Christian.
Last Friday when I was in drug court in Habersham County, we talked about mental health issues. And our coordinator for the drug court is working on a grant. Most of these positions are grant funded, and she is currently working on a grant to try to get us a mental health component to our accountability, our drug court. So we're currently working on that. There's no doubt that mental health is at the root of a lot of problems. A lot of our drug folks come in not only just with drug addictions, but they come in with abuse issues. They come in with both physical and sexual. And so that's prevalent. And we do try to treat them. We have counselors who help them and are a big benefit. But we do need a stronger, more specified mental health component at the minimum to our accountability courts. And if the funding is available, certainly a mental health court.
Okay, this question is for both of you. There have been two very high-profile several cases in recent years in which plaintiffs have sued various law enforcement agencies in the circuit and resulted in a couple of large monetary settlements for those plaintiffs. Have these two incidents lowered the confidence of the people in the legal system in this circuit, and will that hurt, help, or have no effect on prosecuting criminal cases in the future?
Mr. Christian.
Thank you. When I talk to people, one of them you're referring to obviously was flashbang incident, where one is thought to be sold dope to an undercover agent. They went in with a search warrant, and unfortunately a child was severely injured. When I talk to people in Habersham County, they're very supportive of law enforcement. I think folks here in general are supportive of law enforcement. They know law enforcement has a terribly difficult job. They're underpaid. It's dangerous. People just don't care anymore. They don't value human life. And when a deputy or a state patrolman or a police officer steps out of that car, they're just a target to a lot of people, and they don't know it. They can be sitting in their cars and their targets. You only have to look at the news to know that. So I don't believe it's undermined the confidence of the local law enforcement. They understand what a tough job law enforcement has, and we stand by them. I stand by them as a district attorney. I've been doing so my whole life, and will continue to do so.
Same question, Mr. Russell.
I don't think the civil cases have lowered the confidence in the law enforcement per se. It certainly has put a strain on the financial resources of the counties. One of the duties of the district attorney is to advise the police on how they're writing their warrants, how they're conducting their searches, and how they're collecting evidence. As your district attorney, I will certainly do my utmost to provide whatever the police officers need from the district attorney's office. Being that as a duty of the district attorney's office, that means that the district attorney is indeed accountable for, to a certain extent, for police conduct in our circuit. And I think that it's a very important duty, and it's one that I look forward to trying to get into and see if there's something that the police officers need from the district attorney's office.
Okay, again, this question is for both of you. What is the role of a plea deal in the prosecution of criminal cases, and at what point should they no longer be offered?
Mr. Russell.
Well, from my experience on the criminal defense side, the plea deals tend to allow the efficient administration of the prosecutorial system. I know that from my standpoint, we take every case and try to prep it for trial immediately and go forward as if we were going to try that case. And I'm sure that the prosecutors prep every case that they have for trial. They don't all get tried. We can't try every single case. We just don't have the time or the resources in order to try every case. But the cases that are important, the cases that have egregious facts, repeat offenders, those people need to be prosecuted aggressively to the fullest extent of the law, and they need to go to prison.
Mr. Christian.
Nationwide, as well as here in the Mountain Judicial Circuit, the vast majority of cases are resolved by way of plea negotiations. There's not room in prison. We as taxpayers are not prepared. The legislature's not prepared to build more prisons, so we don't have any place to put them. We're trying to reserve prisons for the most violent of people, and that's who should be there, according to the Criminal Justice Reform Act that's coming out of Atlanta. So historically, plea bargaining is something that is done here in the federal system, state system. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's part of the process. If every case went to trial, the whole system would break down. If 80% of the cases went to trial, it would break down. It's impossible to have many trials given that we only have 2 judges sitting in 3 counties, and they're rotating between those counties. So it's part of the system. It's a valid part of the system. Thank you.
Mr. Christian, this question's for you. As the sitting district attorney, what is your process in seeking sentences that bring justice for the victim, the community, and the offender?
Well, that's certainly a balancing act. We certainly take into consideration the victim. I've sat, I've been in houses. I'm in Danny Ray's house. He's a state trooper in Perry, Georgia. His son was killed by a trustee at the jail, shot in the head after he shared pizza with him one night. And I've sat in that house with those victims, and I've sat in the house with other victims with all the food that we bring into these folks to help the pain. So I take a lot of weight, I put a lot of weight into the victims and the impact it has on the community. Defendants need to be treated fairly, justly, and what that requires, that balancing act requires experience, knowledge, education, and you gain that by doing this day in, day out as a public service for your entire career. And that's what I've done as your district attorney and want to continue doing as your district attorney.
Okay, this question is for you, Mr. Russell. With no prior prosecuting experience, how do you plan to approach the position of district attorney?
Well, first off, I do pride myself on being a good listener, and my first order of business will be to speak with all the sheriffs, all the other assistant district attorneys that are currently here in the circuit, and to come up with a plan to go forward and to prosecute cases in the most efficient way as we possibly can. Now, when I say efficient, I also mean that in a most just and fair way. It does require experience in order to be a prosecutor. It requires experience in this community. It requires experience as a lawyer, and that's what what Georgia law requires. It requires that you be a lawyer, and I look forward to to meeting with all of the folks in the office, coming together with a good plan to move forward. And I also want to say that in addition to experience, it also requires good judgment. And I think that I've displayed good judgment in the defense, the criminal defense clients that I've taken, and in some of the plea deals and verdicts that we've gotten.
Gentlemen, this question's for both of you. What is your view on the letter of the law and prosecutorial discretion?
Mr. Christian.
I took an oath to faithfully and impartially uphold the letter of the law, and that's what I have done my whole career. I've been a career prosecutor, state, federal prosecutor, and sometimes the letter of the law says, as a state or as the federal government, you don't prevail on a particular case, but that's justice. That's tough to swallow sometimes, but there's a bigger picture, and that bigger picture is justice. And so you have to have the wisdom, the experience to know when to say, we ought to go forward with this, or we ought not go forward with this. And that's a tough call sometimes, because sometimes you know in your heart that a person is guilty of the crime charged, but you know you don't have the evidence to go forward with it. And that requires you talking to the victims, talking to law enforcement, and everybody understanding that that tough decision has to be made for the integrity of the system.
Mr. Russell.
There are a lot of tough decisions that need to be made when you're talking about the prosecutor's discretion and the letter of the law. The law in Georgia is pretty clear on a lot of crimes, and when a prosecutor has that discretion, he's looking at making sure that justice is done, and the prosecutor has to weigh all the factors: the cost to the circuit, the cost to the victim, and the cost to the office. That being said, when it comes time to prosecute a crime, has to move forward in a very aggressive and just manner, and to make sure that justice is done. A lot of times we can't go for the full amount of the sentence, and I know that in some of my defense cases, I've had defendants that I know were 100% guilty, and the plea deals that we got with the district attorney's office were about a fair result that they spent the appropriate amount of time in jail or in prison or had the right sentence handed down to them through probation.
Okay, this next question is for Mr. Russell. How have your past experiences prepared you to become district attorney of the Mountain Judicial Circuit?
Well, in order to be the district attorney here in the circuit, I think you have to have a good idea of where this community came from, where it's going. I grew up here in Raven County. I am very engaged in this community. I go to Clayton First Methodist Church, involved with Habitat for Humanity and the Foxfire organization. Go back to the previous question about prosecutorial discretion. In order to really be able to ensure that justice is done, you really need to know the ins and outs of your community. And my past experience in this community has certainly given me a unique perspective on it. My past experience in the Navy has also provided me with a lot of opportunities to go and make tough calls and to really go out and make those tough calls where somebody's life might be on the line, or you might be taking someone else's life. And those are experiences that are invaluable to the DA's office, and I believe that I can bring that experience to the DA's office.
Okay, Mr. Christian, this question is for you. Are there efficiencies within the three offices in Raven, Stevens, and Habersham that could save the taxpayer money, and if so, what?
The three offices, staffed offices operate independently of each other. But obviously, as district attorney, you're over all three. And their needs are similar in a lot of ways. They're a little different in some ways. For example, here in Raven County, we don't have a state court, so we hear everything from speeding to felony cases, murders, things of that nature. In terms of efficiency, one of the things that I did after being sworn in on February the 16th of this year as district attorney, I had a staff meeting with all three offices and went over some things that I expected of them. And one of the things that I've implemented is a case review program. And once we get over this election, I'll implement that. We'll also have performance reviews. And those two things in and of themselves and in conjunction with each other will help ensure the movement of cases and orderly disposition of cases in the system. We need to move them as quickly as possible, given the fact that speedy issues are important as well as justice. So thank you.
This question is for both of you. What are your views on charging a minor as an adult, and what is the threshold for doing so?
Mr. Russell.
Well, I believe that we all have to be held accountable for our actions. However, there is no one-size-fits-all in the criminal justice system, and that goes double for those that are in the juvenile court system. We have a duty as citizens to protect our children and the youth here in this community, and that also extends to protecting them from the harsh judgment of being tried as an adult. Now, that being said, I think that once a child has reached the threshold of acting as an adult and committing an adult crime for which there's probably no rehabilitation, then there's a good chance that they might have to be charged as an adult. But as a district attorney, I think that my job is to take the recommendations of the juvenile court prosecutors, and try to keep those crimes in the juvenile court for the benefit of our children.
Mr. Christian.
We currently have a 13-year-old child who's molesting his younger brother. He is hitting on girls in school. He's been kicked out of school. He's displaying himself in public. We met at the Powerhouse, a multidisciplinary team, to try to decide whether to treat him as an adult or a juvenile because of the nature of the charges, and trying to figure out what is best to ensure that that kid will get the best mental health treatment that is available, whether it's through the adult system or the juvenile system. To me, in that case, I want what's best for that kid, as long as we're also protecting the public. The public has to be protected. So In that particular case, I'm all for let's doing what's best. We have the best coverage, the best hope of getting treatment for him long-term and better treatment through the adult system than we did through the juvenile system. So that's probably the route we're going to go. But every case is different, and you have to take these, they're not simple questions or simple answers. You need experience. You need people who can get together with multi-disciplinary.
Thank you, Mr. Christian.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, this question is for both of you. What is your personal view of the death penalty, and what is your threshold for seeking it?
Mr. Christian.
I'm in favor of the death penalty. I've been involved in 3 death penalty cases. In one case, one individual was put to death, Ellis Wayne Felker, for the horrible things he did to a woman. He had previously done that to another woman, and so he was executed here in the state of Georgia. In 2 other cases, cases involving, we came very close. Danny Ray Jr., who was executed by a trustee, we moved that case to Brunswick, Georgia, sought the death penalty, came close to getting it in that particular case, but Jacob Valdez Reyes, the defendant in that case, escaped the death penalty. I'm in favor of it. You have to look at what the statutory law is in terms of when you can seek it. You also have to take into consideration the cost. It has become increasingly burdensome on the communities to seek and maintain. It's not just obtaining the death penalty, it's keeping it, and keeping it, having going through the courts for years and years and years, which system is broken.
Mr. Russell.
I think the cost issue is certainly something that you have to take into consideration. We do all know that it's very, very expensive to try a death penalty case. It might be even more expensive to continue to house those folks in the maximum security prison while they're on death row. I do believe in the death penalty. I did a radio interview this morning in Habersham County and asked me this very question, and we talked a lot about what's more important, your liberty or your life. And I know that for many of us that have served, liberty is the most important thing, and we certainly take away a lot of people's liberty when they commit heinous crimes. But it's also an important deterrent for us to continue to seek the death penalty in cases where it is appropriate.
That concludes our portion of question and answer time. We'll now move on to our closing statements. Mr. Russell.
I can't stay. That's okay. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. A lot of folks are not really engaged in the political system, and you should all be congratulated for coming here tonight to see myself and Mr. Christian talk about our ideas for the district attorney's office. I would like to say that the district attorney is a very important position here in this county, and also in this circuit. They have the duty to bring cases before the grand jury and to prosecute all of the cases that are here in the circuit. I would like to say that every officer, the DA included, has a duty to be fiscally responsible and to try to execute the office in the most efficient way possible. And as your district attorney, I will certainly strive to do that. I'm ready, willing, and able to serve as your district attorney, and I will execute the office with integrity, with honesty, and with fairness. And if you trust me with this position, I'm certain that I won't let you down.
Mr. Christian.
Thank you. I also want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. It does show that you're engaged in the process, and we need people engaged in the process. I want to continue to be your district attorney. I want your vote. I want your support. I want your prayers. This community needs your prayers. You need a district attorney who is knowledgeable, who is experienced, and it's through that experience that you gain a degree of wisdom. You have to make important decisions that affect people's lives every day, every case, both the defendant, the victim, and the community as district attorney. And I am prepared, I have the experience, I have the leadership to serve as your district attorney, and I want to serve as your district attorney. We're committed to this community, we love this community, and I can think of no other place where I'd rather be serving as a district attorney than here in the Mountain Judicial Circuit. Thank you.
This concludes the Clayton Tribune's debate for Mountain Judicial Circuit District Attorney. We would like to thank Mr. Christian and Mr. Russell for their participation. Special thanks to panelists Tom Law, Clark Burt, our live audience, and those viewing our live stream at home. There will now be a short 15-minute break followed by the Clayton Tribune's debate for Georgia State House of Representatives District 8.